Saint John Maximovitch, Bishop of Shanghai and San Francisco, is one of the great 20th century saints. Although he was outwardly frail, inside he was a burning beacon of spiritual power. God filled him with extraordinary gifts, and, in turn, he shared those with the thousands whose lives he touched. The saint was born in 1896 in a village in southern Russia. In 1921, he was evacuated to Belgrade as a result of the civil war in Russia. He quickly rose through the ranks of the church, being ordained a reader, a monk, a hierodeacon, and a hieromonk in just a few years. It was obvious to everyone, even at this stage, that he was an extraordinary man full of self-sacrifice and care for others. He would sleep for only an hour or two each night. He would fast severely, and he would do whatever he could to help others in need. The bishop of the diocese, the well-known Nicholas Velimirovich, already called him a living saint. In 1934, the church decided to elevate Hieromonk John to the rank of bishop. Like many great saints, he resisted this idea. Hieromonk John was summoned to the main town for his consecration. When he arrived in town, he told a lady he knew that he was there by mistake, having been sent for by accident, in place of another Hieromonk John, who was actually meant to be made the bishop. When he saw the same lady the next day, he sadly told her the situation was worse than he thought. It was him that they wanted to make bishop. John protested about this decision, but his protests fell on deaf ears. The church, inspired by the wisdom of the Holy Spirit, knew that John's role as bishop would bring thousands to salvation. Once he was consecrated as bishop, John was assigned to the Diocese of Shanghai in China. He arrived in late November and immediately began working on establishing church unity and strengthening religious education. He was most well known, however, for his protection of the poor and of the needy. John created a home for orphans and would go personally to gather sick and starving children off the dark alleys of Shanghai slums. He would fiercely protect them, in addition to performing all of his other spiritual duties, which included serving the Divine Liturgy every day, no matter how tired or unwell he was. The orphanage eventually housed 1,500 children. After World War II, the communists in China became an increasing threat. He evacuated the entire orphanage to an island in the Philippines. And although this island was known for regular and destructive typhoons, in the entire 27-month period that John was on the island, no typhoon ever hit it. The local Filipinos would say to the Russians, "Your holy man blesses your camp from 4 directions." After John and his orphanage left the Philippines, the island was hit with a terrible typhoon that destroyed the entire camp. From the Philippines, the orphanage was resettled in the United States. This took considerable effort, courage, and perseverance on the saint's behalf. He flew to the United States and sat on the steps of Congress praying until he was noticed, and the law was changed to allow the orphans to enter. Eventually, he was appointed as Bishop of San Francisco and given the difficult task of uniting the divided peoples there. Like many great saints in the church, he faced vicious attacks and accusations from those jealous of him and from those whose personal agendas he had thwarted. The situation reached a climax in San Francisco when his accusers sued him in the courts. The saint was vindicated and dealt with the entire situation with undisturbed peace. The saint's life was filled with great personal struggle, and in turn, God rewarded him bountifully. 2 short stories show this clearly. Once, when he was Bishop of Shanghai, the saint went to provide Holy Communion to a woman who was dying. The woman was infected with rabies. Rabies is a disease that still has no effective treatment and almost always leads to death, and it is transmitted through the saliva of infected animals or people. When he gave Holy Communion to the woman, she had a fit and spat out some of the holy gifts. St. John immediately picked up the Holy Communion which fell on the ground and consumed it himself. Everyone was shocked. "Vladika," they said, "what are you doing?" They were concerned that he would surely be infected and die. St. John peacefully answered, however, that nothing would happen to him, as these are the holy gifts of God. And that is exactly what happened. Another time, St. John went to visit sick people in hospital, as he would often do. He was with another priest, and their mission was specifically to see a dying man and give him Holy Communion. When they arrived at the hospital, however, St. John spotted a joyful young man in his early 20s, who was due to be discharged the next morning. John immediately called the man and told him, "I want to give you communion right now." John also heard his confession. The other priest was confused. He asked the saint, "Why did you spend so long with this young and healthy man, which delayed our mission to visit a man who was dying?" John, however, who had been blessed with the gift of foreknowledge, told the priest that the young man would die tonight, whereas the other man would live for many years. This gift of foreknowledge extended to him knowing the day of his death. He prepared himself and died peacefully on 2 July 1966. He was canonized as a saint 28 years later, on 2 July 1994. His canonization service was attended by thousands, and the great saint continues to perform miracles to this day. May St. John also intercede to God that he have mercy upon us.